Maybe. Because we're
Okay,
not
we
in.
are recording. All right, so this week's topic discussion is the need for digital citizenship training within our students, and I'm going to say with our teachers. The first article that I found was Digital Citizenship, You Can't Go Home Again. Pretty much the article discussed that technology is here to stay, and the focus must now be on how to productively and responsibly use digital citizenship or the internet. I know a lot of us use social media and email and search the web, and this article is pretty much saying that we need to have awareness levels for our students so that they know what they should and shouldn't be doing on the internet and to be more tech savvy. A lot of us think that our digital natives, as they call them, are tech savvy when technically they're not. A lot of them just know how to get on there on social media, but they don't really realize what they do can be detrimental for the long run. But first thing that caught me by surprise on my article was some numbers, some percentages. It said that 84% of parents indicate that school technology use has a added value to their child's learning, which I agree. I mean, if you're in a classroom, you know that technology, the kids seem to like to learn more when they use technology. But it also said that 78% say the best way for their child to develop college and career and citizen-ready skills they will need for the future success is to use technology on a regular basis. So they think that their students should be using, or their children should be using technology on a daily basis in their classrooms. I know for me that in my classroom, I do not use technology every day. I mean, if you want to count the smart board, okay, fine. But to me, that's just a glorified whiteboard. But to actually bring out the cows, the computer on wheels, and bring out the computers every day, I do not do, because I tend to find that students tend to linger onto other sites and not doing what they're supposed to. So I try to limit it some. And the other one said that 64% agree that effective technology use increases their interest in what they are learning in school. I say yes to some of that, but I also say no. Kind of going back to like what I said earlier, that some of the students like technology, but I have had a few that would rather have me up there talking and telling them and giving stories and not just giving them a website to go search on. I don't know if any of you have found that in your.
When I was in school, I hated using computers. Like, I hated. Ugh.
Yeah.
It kind of like the teacher's kind of like, oh, here you go do this.
Yeah, and I think
If it's not practical, I hate it.
Yeah, and I think that some teachers do use it for that, and that's kind of where I'm torn on technology. There is some great technology out there for students, but at the same time, I think teachers are starting to use technology more of as busy work. Here you go, do this. I have other things I need to take care of, and it's more of a break. But I know that there is technology out there that is more teacher and student interactive, where the teacher is actually having to interact also. I just haven't found many sites for that yet.
And I've been interested in finding those as well, because I noticed that if I'm to put my kids in front of a computer, even if I'm doing notes, I would rather them close their computer while I'm doing the notes rather than try to look at them, because they tend to wander onto other sites and I can't really engage their attention while I'm going over the notes.
Yeah. So mainly this article, Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Like, y'all are talking about like wanting to close their computers. Like, I had there were classes in school where like they weren't allowed to use the computers. They had to do the hands-on stuff because they were not they were just like not responsible. But another class could do it because there were more kids who were gonna like focus on the work. Like, it's all about. That's another thing, is teaching the kids, like, appropriate use of time. Like, cool, you have access to games and you have access to these sites and you can do whatever, but it's like you have to take your own personal responsibility of doing the work and like completing a task, like remembering its schoolwork. So like teachers could limit who uses computers when, or like when is it a valuable resource.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So on the article, it talked about awareness levels. Ribble is the guy's name, Mike Ribble. He said the concerns, which we know about, are such as sexting, cyberbullying, identity theft, and terrible digital events. That pretty much that the students need character development and digital maturity, and was kind of saying, how do we get to this place with the use of technology? The thing about technology in the classroom, and we've seen it in a lot of schools, is that fights have broke out with the use of computers in the classroom. Just because I know the school I'm at is a 0 cell phone policy. They are not allowed to have their cell phones. If we see it or hear it, we take it, and it's turned into the office. So when you give them a computer, they start IMing, and we've literally had people like meet up in the bathroom for a fight because they've had a computer. We all know with like social media, the cyberbullying and things like that, because students are kind of hiding behind computer screens. So I think that teaching students awareness of, how harmful being behind a computer can be is beneficial, because I don't think the students realize that what they do can mark them forever with a computer. As we were growing up, well, at least I know I did. I don't know how old you guys are. We didn't have computers. I mean, like high school, where we just got dial-up, and that was, little Roadrunner man running across the screen. So for me, I didn't have to go through the effects of social media or just computers in general. But I think the students now, it's the norm for them, and that's why they're calling them the digital natives. And it is our responsibility as educators to teach them the awareness of the effects of using the internet, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
The term "the internet is forever" is so true.
Yes.
If it's on the internet, it's out there for life.
Yeah, it is. And, the thing is technology is just going to keep advancing. So, So they said that, technology has dramatically increased over the past few years, which we all know. I mean, you just see it. You see it everywhere. I mean, you now have, talk to Alexa in your home. She knows everything about you. And it said that 68% of U.S. adults have smartphones. That's up 35% from 2011. I honestly think that number might be a little bit higher now, because this article was in 2017. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think more people have smartphones now than they used to. But it did say for school-age individuals, the accessibility of mobile devices, especially smartphones, that 92% of teens report going online daily at multiple times, which we agree. I mean, I don't know how many of you use your smartphone consistently throughout the day, but it is growing. So the question that this guy asked was how awareness with our digital citizens issues changed by educators and administrators in the environment. So he's saying that, we're trying to teach our students about digital citizenship, but we also have a lot to learn, that we can't just teach them what we don't know. So he's saying that, administration and teachers also need to have training, which could be through professional development, I think is the best way, to teach us how to teach our students more about digital citizenship and their footprint they're leaving in the world out there. Let's see. So, do you guys have anything to add for right now?
No. Do you want me to go ahead and start with mine?
Hold on 1 second. So I think I'm about finished with this article. Well, okay. So he said there are several initiatives that parents, students, and educators can achieve by understanding digital citizenship. Pretty much to aim what we need to do is to aim to empower students to make smart, responsible, and respectful decisions when using media, and help them to understand the ethical consequences behind decisions they make online, the implementation of school-created digital citizenship program. I know when we had to do our lesson plan last week, I already had one because I actually do in my public safety class, we have a cybersecurity section. And last semester I did implement a section, one day only, of digital citizenship, and was pretty much telling them what they should and shouldn't do, and gave them scenarios, and they had to work it out on what could happen. I think that's something that we could all do in all of our classes. I think no matter what you teach, there's an area, even if it's just beginning of the school year when you're kind of going over the rules. And I actually thought about using it maybe next year, just the first few days, go straight into digital citizenship before we ever start passing out computers in the classroom. So I think that's something that all of us could do just to help students understand, because I don't know about you guys, but I really don't think our students understand what can happen through a computer. I don't know if you guys have seen it or have even been a victim of, you know, things that have happened through the internet. But I think these students really don't think it can have long-term effects. I think they just think it will go away.
They just think of the now, not the aftermath.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes into, you know, like their age, and, you know, they're not fully developed and their brain's not developed all the way, so consequences are different for them than for us. Because I mean, you know, even now thinking back, I'm like, oh, as a child, you know, why did I do certain things? But at the time, it was what it was, you know. So do you want to go into your article, or you want me to go into my next one?
Oh, go ahead with the next one.
Oh, okay. So the other one was teaching digital literacy across the curriculum. And it kind of goes back to what I was just saying a little bit ago. No matter what classes you teach, I pretty much think all classes now have like this technology in their classroom that they are forcing. I know our school is Cumberland County, is technology driven. I think most counties are now. Is that correct?
Well, we're one to one, so yes.
Yeah, I think
I know
it's
the
like,
county that I live in, everyone gets a computer, so it's like,
Yeah.
that's how they do a lot of their learning.
oh
That's
wow.
Which is a little bit
Everyone
Like
has
each
one.
student gets a computer, like to take home?
everything. I think when
Yep.
you high school kids get, they all get computers. So
In my county, everyone from 6th grade and up gets one before school starts.
Really?
Yes.
See, we aren't at that level yet. Like, we have them in our classrooms, but we do share, like 2 classrooms share a CAL, so we have to coordinate. But wow, but we do have a program that if they do not have a computer or Wi-Fi at home, they will help them get
offer one.
Yeah, but no, we don't. Wow, that's awesome.
And my daughter says when she
I
goes
don't
to
think
2nd
it's
grade,
awesome though.
she'll get one.
No?
I don't think it's awesome because I have friends who have kids in the system, in the school system. Like, they use it for whatever. It's not like a school. It's not like they get it at school. They use it for basically whatever they want. It's because, like, we're really low income, and a lot of kids, you know, they live with their grandparents who may not have Wi-Fi or may not have a computer, but still, like, I think it should be kept at school. I think a lot of teachers use it for, like, homework. A lot of the homework is online too. From when I was teaching in the county, I asked kids, like, why do you guys always have your computers? Why do you guys always have this? Like, oh,
Every time they come in my class. So the thing that I don't like about it is no matter what I'm teaching, as soon as they come in the classroom, the first thing they do is open their computer.
Okay.
I haven't even done attendance, and they're opening their computer because they're trying to get online and play a game, or they're trying to get on social media. And I don't really see it as, I'm not going to say I don't see the benefit, because you do have some students that actually take the initiative to get their work done, and they are using those computers maybe to help them do other things outside of class. Like, I have one student who she'll do her work and then she'll go and apply for jobs. Use her computer to apply for jobs. You know, or I have other students who may work on their IB program. They work on their IB work outside of school and that's beneficial for them. But when I have students who will come in my class and won't turn in one assignment, but they're always on their laptop.
Okay.
That should be like an instant takeaway for me. Like there needs to be a discipline level.
Yeah.
Like you have to earn that. Otherwise, it's pen and paper, sweetheart. You don't get the computer because that should be a privilege. Like that should not be a hand-given thing. Or if it is, it has to be school and it has to be monitored. Like
Right.
it can't be open to everything. Like there has to be blocks. Because I remember when I was in school and we had computers, there were blocks to literally every single game. You couldn't get on Facebook. You couldn't get on whatever. You couldn't get on YouTube. A teacher could get on YouTube. You couldn't get on YouTube.
Yeah, that's not the case anymore.
Yeah,
They
like
figured out a way around
it's too open. It's too open. And it's
Well, I
not
guess, like, hearing from you guys that have computers daily, I guess it is, now that you guys have said it, I guess it is kind of more, it hinders, because at least with us, you know, we have cows in our room, but it's controlled. Like when I say it's time to get computer, it's time to get computer. When I say it's time to put them away, it's time to put them away. So I kind of, maybe I do like the way we do it, because
I like the way you do it more.
yeah, because to me, and maybe that's kind of goes back like our cell phone policy. Maybe you guys need a computer policy of if it's not time.
It just has to be enforced.
Yes.
Like we have the same thing with cell phones, but students are like, they feel like they're just entitled to those phones in class. And if
I had a girl,
then one teacher trying to do something to, you know, take my phone is not really going to make a difference to them. They're going to just say, I'm going to get it back later.
Okay. Yeah.
this is what really bothers me about like youth and their technology usage and their dependency on it. I was teaching this class, and I taught an after-school program, so it wasn't like I was in class, but we kind of kept the same school rules: no phones, whatever. You can use them if I ask you to. But she went to the bathroom, and right as she got up from the table, she picked up her phone. Like from like we would keep them in the center of the table. And the teacher was like, my co-teacher was like, well, why do you need your phone in the bathroom? She goes, because I feel safe with it. What? Like, what do you she like had a full-on breakdown about not taking her phone to the bathroom. Then she ended up not going to the bathroom.
Oh, wow. So she was going to go use her phone is what she was going to do.
Yeah, she was going to go use her phone, and like it's all about teachers, and I guess this really goes with like the whole computer thing is like you have to, how I feel like you have to have faith in your students that they're going to use the computers responsibly. You as a teacher have to be able to like evaluate your kids, and hopefully they'll do what's best for them and use the computers in a way that, you know, is educational progressive. Like they're not playing Cube Field, or they're not playing Snake, or they're not IMing each other and starting fights. But
and that kind of goes along with this article that I have, because what you just said, because it does state, it says, teaching digital literacy in subject areas is not about being fashionable or simply about trying to engage students in learning. It's about addressing the changing nature of subject knowledge and acknowledging that young people will need different kinds of skills, knowledge, and understanding in order to develop their subject expertise. Which is pretty much saying, you know, because, I mean, all jobs they go into, they're going to have some type of computer skill. So it's like our responsibility to help them learn that. Plus they just need functional skills and the ability to complete basic internet searches and PowerPoint presentations. My students have to do a certification through NIMS, which is FEMA.
Correct.
And they have to sign up, and I tell them never to use their school email, because once they graduate, that email's gone. They need to use their personal email. Well, I found my very first year of teaching that students, and I guess I was just being naive, I thought all students this day and age knew how to use a computer. Well, when I told them when they got the email with their certification link to forward it to me, I was shocked at least over half of each class did not know how to forward an email. And I'm like,
Oh.
how do you not know how to forward an email? If you scroll down, there's a button that says forward. So now, beginning of each year, or each semester, I teach them how to use email, how to send an email, how to properly send an email, how to forward an email, how to reply all. They did not know how to do that.
So
It
that's
blows my mind
interesting.
that a student.
That's interesting because I kind of assume the same thing. And what I have my students do, I guess this is something that probably would have been a digital lesson, because I actually have my students, I upload a link into Google Classroom for them to submit their certifications after they complete it, but they have to download it or upload it into Google Classroom. And a lot of them didn't know how to download it, which also would save it into their drive. And they would just forward me the email that said, oh, this student passed, with the link for me to open it up and download it. And I was like, no, I want you to do the work. I want you to upload the certificate. I want you to put it in there. So when I go to Google Classroom, I see the certificate and I see it's there. I can just keep going and I see that you have it. And I can also save it into my drive, but a lot of them didn't know how to upload or download from the link in the email.
Yeah. And it says like digital skills and knowledge are not evenly spread amongst all young people. And I didn't even take this into consideration, that the distribution is affected by class, race, gender, and nationality, creating a participation gap. Honestly, I didn't even think about that. And it kind of goes back to our diversity class, Caroline. I never even took that into consideration of some reasons why some students are more tech savvy than others. But if I think about it, it's pretty much common sense that, not everybody has a computer at home. Not everybody sits on a gaming system and knows how to kind of work the buttons and things like that. So that was kind of interesting for me to take into consideration in the future of reasons why some students aren't as tech savvy as others. So
it still blows my mind that y'all said that they don't know how to send an email, but boy, do they know how to send like paragraph long text messages to like 7 different people, and like they know how to use these different apps. I mean, just because they know how to use apps, like they could probably tell me how to put certain things on my phone to where I'd never have to worry about anything ever again. Which I still don't know how to use my phone. Doesn't mean that they know how to like appropriately send an email that is professional, and or like, you still have to put dear in your emails, or like, hey, Miss Laura, like it's just like a letter.
mm-hmm.
So like my big thing is that after like they don't know, well, the question for what are top 3 recommendations or suggestions for education classrooms based on your research, one of my recommendations would be always, always, always don't assume that your kids are technology, like they know what they're doing. Always go over what you want them to, what needs to be done before the assignment even starts, and how it's supposed to be done and why it has to be done, or what they're learning from it.
And I think that's the crucial role that we play, is to ensure that they know what they're supposed to be doing. And we have to teach them, because we can't just assume that they know. And that's where I find a lot of fault in myself, is that I just assume, because I'm like, you always hear how they're the digital natives, they know it all, when really they know what they want to know when it comes to playing and things like that. But to close out my article, pretty much it just said that we need to make sure we're communicating with them. We need to be able to teach them critical thinking and to evaluate while they're on the computer. We also have to teach them that cultural and social understanding. They need to understand the same thing, the same actions maybe have different meanings in different cultures. So that many things which appear at first glance to be natural and neutral are in fact created by particular cultural and social understandings. I know not long ago there was a big issue with, I don't know how many of you know, like the little hand sign that students do, that if you look at, they like chop you in the back of the neck or whatever. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Well, it's kind of like,
Kids to hit each other in the back of the neck.
this little thing. And if a student looks at it, or if it's
Oh.
a kid, or if they hit you or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that has now became like a racist hand signal.
Wait, what?
No, it's homophobic.
What
It's
is
a
it?
homophobic thing.
Is
It's a homophobic thing. Like,
is it okay? And
it means like, oh, if a dude looks at it, you're gay. Like that's what it means.
okay.
I never
Well,
knew anything
because
about it.
growing up, that was always like my brother used to do it, and he'd be like, "Hey, Chrissy, look," and then I'd look, and he'd like pop me on the arm or something, you know. But now that has changed. So when I read this about, you know, understanding other cultures, understanding just social etiquette, that students need to watch what they do, because just because it's okay in your little group might be offensive to others. So you kind of have to be.
A lot of people, like it happens a lot with males. Females don't usually do that. They'll do it as like, hey, like if you look here, like you're checking me out kind of thing. Like
Okay.
it's really not okay. I don't know. I've never seen it used in a race way, but I've definitely seen it used in like, oh, you're gay, like kind of thing. Like, no.
Say it was California. I think that it was in a yearbook, and it came up, and I was like, it just blew my mind, because I was like, growing up, that was something completely different. But it just shows how, you know, with time things change. I mean, I know, you know, some of you have seen like students use terms that we use daily for normal things that mean other things. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so you might, like, I just found out this semester, like, or this past spring semester, that Netflix and chill doesn't mean what I think it means.
No.
You know, like, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And the students laughed at me, and I was like, you guys are taking just simple words and changing them into
That's what this generation does.
other meanings. Like, yeah.
Luckily for me, I have a 17-year-old, so
Okay.
I know a lot of what my students will be. My students will say things, and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And then I'll respond. They'll be like, "Miss Brady, you know what that means?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do know what that means."
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, they thought it was comical. So
The perks of me being a young teacher, like I know everything. Like I'm very up to date on all the stuff, and I'm like, and when I hear kids say it, I'm just like, go back to being a kindergartner, go back to this. Like, no, this is not okay. Like,
well, I need you to send me like cheat sheets or something, because I do have students that like send me articles like, okay, Miss Dobie, this is what they're saying, and I'm like, thanks, appreciate it. So, yeah. And I don't consider myself old, but I mean, to them, I mean, like some of the things they do, and like some of the stuff they talk about with like technology, you know, the things they're hiding on their phones from their parents through certain apps, and just like, this is kind of scary. It's crazy and it's scary. But back to my article, the last thing was e-safety, which pretty much goes what I just said. So we just have to teach them about, you know, all the bad things that can happen, and teach them safety through the internet. So that pretty much.
More sex trafficking happens. You should know this, Christine. Like, sex trafficking happens through the internet. Mm-hmm. So the more that they put out there, the more like ability that they are to be found by people like that. Like, So yeah, like, cool, you look great in that picture, but people can find you through hashtags. People can find you through what you post, and then you're putting your, like, and it's really huge for women and even men. You're putting yourself at these risks or not great things to happen to you.
Yeah. And tagging themselves where they're at that location. It's like, okay, well, now they know where you're at and what you look like.
Correct.
You know, yeah. So we teach that to our students, but they have the mentality of, it can't happen to me. That's the problem. To close mine, so last thing what he said was, teaching digital literacy is important not only in supporting the students to become independent critical learners, but also by narrowing the gap between children's lived experiences inside and outside of school. So it pretty much is, you know, let's which I think your articles will probably say about the same of, is our responsibility to educators to help our students teach or help to teach our students digital literacy. Because in the one article, it did say, the parents don't. The parents are about as pretty much on the same level as their own children. They don't really know much about the internet. They just go by what they've heard. And as educators, we tend to know more because we're in a classroom of 30 kids. We hear what they say, we hear what they're doing, where the parents don't get to hear all of that because the students or their children keep it from them. So that was the end of my 2 articles. Now it's y'all's turn.
So, my articles, so the article that I had, it talked about core principles in media literacy. And so when I was going through, it gave me like 5 different subjects or 5 different core principles in media literacy. So I went through and I just highlighted some of the things that stood out to me in my article. And the first section was media literacy education requires active inquiry and critical thinking about messages we receive and create. And that stood out to me because I always try to get my students to think critical about anything that I like. If I give them an article to read, I want you to think into the article. What kind of questions come up when you read the article? Are you left feeling like that all the information was relayed, or are you wondering where did they get this information from? Because a lot of times media is pretty much, it is coming from somewhere, like they're asking questions of someone. And is there 2 sides to every story pretty much? Is this the full story, or is there also a different version of the story that may be hidden behind the scenes? And one of the things it said was, media and media messages can influence beliefs, attitudes, values, behaviors, and the democratic process. And so whenever I show a media clip in my class, I never lead the discussion. I always ask, well, what did you think about that? Or what did you get from this clip, to kind of see what they're thinking, what their thoughts are, because I don't want to feed them information. I want them to kind of think for themselves and tell me what it is that they're thinking, because we're probably going to be thinking on 2 different levels. And it also creates I like the fact that it said it creates the democratic process, because when how society, we have a democratic society where everyone has a right to voice their opinions. And a lot of times that the messages that are relayed in media, sometimes that can influence other people's opinions. And so for them to be able to stop and think about the message that they're actually looking at and come up with their own opinion. I like that part of the article. And then it said, instructional practices must be modified appropriately for learners of different ages in different settings. The process of critical questioning and the specific wording of questions may vary. So that just talked about kind of like differential instruction depending on who the learner is. And I know I have students who are ELL, and I have students who have IEPs, and then I have just my regular general classroom students. And so they're all in the classroom setting. And sometimes I may have to modify a question or some kind of instructional learning based upon who the assignment is for. If it's for one of my ELL students, because the wording can be where they might not be able to comprehend some of the wording. So I may have to break it down or have them look up maybe a specific word that they may have trouble with. And sometimes I may even have to draw a picture so that they can relate it to the word itself. So that was one thing. The next section talked about media literacy. Education expands the concept of literacy. And it said that media literacy encompasses both analyzes and expression. So it makes you think, and it talks about the expression, how people express themselves. And that I think that kind of related to being able to think critically of the message that you're receiving. Another point that I looked at was media literacy education develops informed, reflective, and engaged participants. Explores representations, misrepresentations, and lack of representations of cultures and countries in the global community. I know in Law and Justice, one of the things that we look at is we look at some of the cultural misconceptions that people have when it comes to policing and how cultures view the work of police officers differently. And so when we discussed that this past semester in my class, my students were really shocked because it was more so the PowerPoint footage that I had, it pretty much cut it off like black versus white, but it didn't go into detail like any other cultures. More so, it was just pretty much black versus white, more being black being the minority, but it didn't really talk about other cultures and how they perceive policing. And so that's one thing to be aware of, how other cultures interact with maybe digital media, digital literacy, or how they, in my curriculum, how they would interact with policing. So one of the projects that I had my students do was they did a cultural exploration project to where they would just they would research other cultures and find out some of the things that would be misconceptions of that culture, things that you would want to know when you're interacting with that culture that would be good for you to know when interacting with that culture, just so they could learn about different cultures and things that you may want to know when interacting with them. So let's see. The last one in this article talked about media literacy education affirms that people use their individual skills, beliefs, and experiences to construct their own meanings from media messages. And the one that I highlighted was media literacy education recognizes that students' interpretations of media text may differ from the teacher's interpretation without being wrong. And so that kind of relates to why I always, when I put something up, I ask my students for their feedback before I kind of like give what it is I'm trying to get them to see. I will ask them for their feedback because a lot of times their interpretations, they have good interpretations and it's not wrong, but it can be different from mine. So that was the last one in that article. You want me to go ahead and do the next article? So both of my articles pretty much, when I looked at them, they both pretty much had they were relatively they had some of the same information. The next article, I think Caroline also had the same article, was the common sense one. And it talked about how literacy, sometimes we think literacy is being able to read and write, of course, but media literacy it's pretty much similar to literacy because in reading and writing, we're trying to understand, we're looking at people understanding words. And in media literacy, we want them to understand the different types of media that they're looking at and the messages that they're sending. So just like reading and writing, we want you to be able to understand the words that you're writing, and we want you to be able to read them and comprehend them. But within media literacy, we want you to be able to understand the different types of messages that you're receiving from the media that you're looking at, or the messages that you're sending. And it also talked about being able to learn to think critically, which was one of the key points in my last article, being able to learn to think critically. And then creating media responsibility, recognizing your own point of view and saying what you want to say and how you want to say it, and understand that your message has an impact. So when that kind of goes back to what you were saying, when students put something out there, they need to realize that that message is left there forever. That footprint is left there forever. And so you want to watch what you say, because depending on what you say, there can be consequences as to what you may put out on the internet.
And I think that's a lot, like you're saying with the media literacy, we all learn to read and write. But then now with technology, we also have to learn the correct way through technology, which is actually, I think, a really good key point. I don't think people look at it that way. As you have, like I just said, you have to teach them to read and write, but then now we're, and on top of that, having to teach them the technology side also of the proper way to do things. Um, and then, like you said, with the messages having an impact, that's even for us. When you send an email to a parent or even to a student, you have to watch how you say it and how you word it. Because, if you're sending an email because a student's being, inappropriate in class or having discipline issues, you still have to remember this is a child. You're talking to their parent, which, we all, if you have kids, like your child can do wrong, but you still have that guard up for your child.
Right.
So we kind of have to tell the parent in a proper way of what's going on with their child without trying to, I don't want to say hurt their feelings, but you know what I mean? Like without coming off too harsh, because we do have to take in consideration this is someone's child that we are talking to them about. Nobody wants to hear their child is being bad or having issues in the class. So I think that's very important also.
And the last part of the article was one that I always ask my students, like when they do research, and this may be one of those 3 recommendations that you suggest for educational classroom, but the last part of the article talked about key questions to ask when teaching kids media literacy. Pretty much when my students research something, I always tell them, first of all, Wikipedia is not going to be a site that I want you to give me for your research. But when you research something, ask yourself, who created this article? Why did they create the article? Some of those questions that you want kids to think about to see pretty much how, what's the word I'm looking for? How, I can't think of it. To see like how accurate the information is. That's what it is. So who the message is for, what techniques are being used to make this message credible. So what kind of information are they putting into their message to make it credible, or what kind of sources are they citing to make it credible? So I ask them to look at all those things, to cite their sources when they're researching things. And I think that is like a good tool for a classroom to ask those questions when you're researching and looking up things in your class. Can you say why you think this is accurate? Who does it tell you? Who did this message come from, and why did they do it, and what makes it accurate and reliable?
I like that. Okay. Was that the end of your article?
Yes. So,
okay.
That was a combination of the 2 articles.
Very good. I like that. All right. Gives us some things to think about. Caroline, are you ready?
Ready is not the keyword I would use, but yes.
Well, let's do this.
I know, right? So while y'all were talking, I was listening. The core principles of media literacy, I did use that one. I also found one. It's by Science Direct, Media Literacy. It talks about a few different things. Oh gosh, I know my internet. Okay. So like positive youth development is huge because it's like media talks about like the development and behaviors of children. Monique was talking about like what we see online affects how we feel. She was talking about like the attitudes towards police officers. Like we see police officers now so negative because of how much stuff gets videotaped and put on the internet about negative towards police officers. So of course our users are going to see those videos and are going to be like, oh my gosh, like I hate the police. Like, look at that police officer beating that youth. Sorry, I had a work text message. And then so there's this quote that says, media literacy is a 21st century approach to education. It provides a framework to access, analyze, evaluate, and create messages in a variety of forms from print to video to the internet. Media literacy builds an understanding of the role of media in society as well as essential skills of inquiry and self-expression necessary for citizens of democracy. So I see that, and I read that, and the last part that gets me is of essential skills of inquiry and self-expression necessary for citizens of democracy.
Right.
So it goes back to what Monique was talking about, the critical questions of, like, is this a reliable source? Because we get so much of our misconstrued information, whether it be about, like, a government candidate, whether it be about police officers, whether it be about new laws that are coming into effect, or what's true about those laws that are coming into effect. That's how we find out, like, what we support. Because I don't think kids nowadays really sit there and watch the news. I do, but what kids sit there and watch the news and get their facts from, media sources like that, even though it's known that those media sources are biased. It's about finding non-biased information about that's pure fact and making their general assumptions from that. And the big thing is that these media literacy is really important because our users need to become smart consumers of information and products that are found online. Like, a smart consumer is not just, I'm going to go out and buy something. A smart consumer is like, a consumer of information, a consumer of products that, are being put out online and, stuff like that. And how can our students make sure that they're, being safe, and whether something is credible or whether something is persuasive intent, and try to resist certain techniques that are like targeting marketers. Because I know a lot of scams will go online and, like, something will be big and flashy or something look really cool, and you'll put in your information. Well, there goes your bank account. They have your money, and your information has now been sold on the black web. And then it also, I'm going back on your common sense media, and, like, recognize a point of view. So every creator has a perspective. This helps kids not only, like, open their minds to themselves, but it also appreciate different perspectives. It also helps with us putting information, in context of what they already know or what they think they know. So it's just another open forum where people can be open, or people can freely voice their opinions or their point of views in an unbiased unbiased media outsource. So kids are being, our users are being able to see these different forms of freedom of speech through media. And then I had another article, which was the Pediatrics AAP Public News and Journal, Developing Digital Media Literacies in Children and Adolescents. So not only does digital literacy affect, like, our culture, it affects the economy and what we're buying and how we're buying it, or what we're seeing, or what we're being influenced on. But, like, how can we as parents, educators, health professionals, and community leaders ensure that the youth become digitally and media literate? So there are different, like, experimental and pilot programs in the digital and media literacy fields are yielding insights, but gaps in understanding and lack of support for research and development continue to impede growth in these areas. So, like, when I say, like, impede growth, like, there are things blocking, like, they want kids to be on their apps. Everything is an app. You have an app. There's an app for getting your dog walked. There is an app for tracking certain things you shouldn't be tracking on your phone, but for girls, if you know what I'm talking about. And then just, like, everything is an app. So it kind of impedes the ability to appropriately use media in a way that is safe, or in a way that is positive towards growth in our economic, or even our government, or in our world of democracy. Like, because everything's biased, everything is bubble, everything is this. Because just because it's freedom doesn't mean it's right. I think Chrissy, like as you teach public safety and all that stuff, you know all the amendments, every single amendment. um, freedom of speech is,
and it's not always free.
it's not always free. It comes with a price. Everything comes with a price. So like, I mean, if it's free to somebody else, just be like people just use these outsources to vent. Like, I think, oh God, I hated this. When Donald Trump got elected into presidency, there was DonaldTrump.com or DonaldTrump.org, and it was literally just him, like a cartoon of him and him saying nasty things. And people like created it because they were angry. Well, kids have access to the site. What if they Google Donald Trump? They're going to see that website and they're going to see, oh, well, this person, I should think this way of, our president, or I should think this way of so-and-so. Not saying I support, not saying I don't. I'm just saying, like, kids can't form their own opinions solely based on facts. They're basing it off media importance, which is really stupid. Because, like, I know, like, when in 2008, when Barack Obama, was it 2008? It was 2008. Was being elected into presidency, like that was a huge deal because like that really set the gap between Republicans and Democrats. And like kids in 8th grade, I was in 8th grade when that happened. Kids in 8th grade were like, "Oh, you just believe what your parents believe," like, and you don't. Like, you're telling me you know everything based on everything. And they're like, "Yeah, I looked it up on Google," and I was like, "Okay, alrighty." That's kind of like where I started seeing like people were just using the internet to find out like different like untrue facts. So then this one also says all learners and educators need a sufficient degree of digital age literacy where media, digital, and social emotional literacies are present to be able to use these learning resources to learn through multiple media confidently, effectively, and safely. So it's not just talking about like us, like the students needing that training. It's like also about like teachers and educators and anyone who's going to allow students to use media for an education-based, learning. How do we know what's safe? How do we know, like, just because we're adults doesn't mean we know what is safe and, effective on the internet.
Right.
Because a lot of adults didn't grow up with the internet like I did. I had the internet, but it doesn't mean I know how to safely use it. It doesn't mean I know I can teach someone effectively how to, I can tell you what a credible source is, but that's about it. I can tell you how to safely write an email. That's about it. I can tell you don't post inappropriate pictures on the internet. Don't post racist or hateful things on the internet. Don't bully someone on the internet. But that's about as far as I go. Because that's all I was taught. That's all I was no. And then it also says the fallout about fake news from the 2016 U.S. presidential election is but one example of the consequences we face when citizens do not engage critical digital media literacies. So what I'm saying, and that goes back to like adults started the fake news thing. Adults were the ones who started saying fake news or that's not real. Like you kind of I've seen an influx of adults not knowing what a credible source is, and on my Facebook with just them sharing things. I'm like, okay, that's not real, but cool, you can share it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a huge thing. So like this it calls for an education that goes beyond like mastery of traditional like content and kind of bridging a gap between a vision of interconnected learning and reality of education is so wide that we kind of just need to bridge it with that education between teachers and you. So if like we say, hey, like I would like it if you showed me how to get to this on my phone, but can you, and then knowing that we don't know everything, but the students also need to know that like we know what's safe, like we know what's best for them. Mm-hmm. That's really what I got from both of those articles. And then I found another one. Hold on one second. The Federal Communications Commission's FCC 2009 Notice Inquiry NOI on empowering parents and protecting children in an evolving media landscape gave one measure of how widely recognized media literacy's potential importance may be. The commissioners asked for public comment on the effectiveness of media literacy programs and their availability and the ability of schools and other organizations to deliver this critical information to children. And this basically said that there are 3 levels based on the foci of instruction and study, which includes media production, influence media, and media content. That kind of just also says those are the 3 things. So social, economic, political, and ethical, and then critical analysis of everything. So kind of like all of our articles are pretty much in consensus. I have not seen any single differences of our articles because every article says the same thing in a different sentence. It talks about safety. It talks about, all the different factors that go on with digital literacy and why it's important that we teach those factors now, because when they grow up to be functioning adults in our economic society, they need to be able to do certain things just to hold a job, which, promotes everything positive in our democratic and economic society. So I'm done because I just rambled and I feel,
No, you had some really good points. I have to agree. I think all of our articles were pretty much the same. And that's when I was looking through online, pretty much every article I came across, every website I came across, they all were like, we have to teach this. We have to show them what's right, what's wrong. We have to show them safety. And they all said pretty much the same thing. Caroline, the one thing you said about the fake news, it is big. I see it too when people post, say Facebook, from like snoop.com or something. I'm like, that's, it's not reliable. But if you think back, I know you're younger than me, but, fake news has been around forever. I remember being in the grocery store with my mom and grandma, and, the little magazines at the checkout with Inquirer and you see all of them reading them, like the older adults, and you're like, that's not real, but they're still reading them. And that's a generation that's posting kind of more of the fake news now, but now they just have technology to post it with instead of reading it in the checkout line, but you are correct with the students. And Monique, you probably hear this a lot in your class, and I teach this where we go over in my class. A lot of students' views are based off of their parents because they're not old enough to make their own decision. The one thing that makes me cringe is when I'm out in public, and it might just be because I teach law and justice, and my brother's an officer and my niece is a detention officer, and is when I hear a parent tell their kid, if you don't behave, the police are going to arrest you and take you to jail. And I'm like, that's teaching your child to fear the police. I have a 5-year-old. I teach her when we see one, I'm like, oh, look, there's a police officer. I want her, if anything ever happens, to be able to go up to a police officer, not to fear a police officer. But that goes back to, children are taught from their parents, their beliefs, how they feel towards one race or, male or female or same-sex marriage or anything like that. They're taught that from their surroundings.
My law and justice class is mostly minorities, Hispanic and, mostly Hispanics, and maybe a couple of African Americans, and then I may have a couple of Caucasian students, but it's a minority classroom. So the first thing I asked when I did policing, the section on policing, I was like, what are you all's views and opinions about police officers? And automatically everything was bad. Oh, negative, negative, negative. Well, I do have a couple of students who want to be police officers. These are your classmates. You guys get along with them perfectly fine. So are you telling me that if they become a police officer, you're going to automatically think bad about them? Well, no, because I know them personally. This is and I said, so why would you automatically think bad about someone that you have that you don't know? And I said, and on top of that, in Orange County, we haven't had any police incidents like that you all, well, it's because of social media. You see all of this on social media, and I said, but here in our particular county, we haven't seen any of those incidents occur. So why would you automatically just not want to have anything to do with police officers, or you think bad about them here in your county? Because those are the same people. Most of our deputies are people that grew up and probably went to school with your parents and things like that. So just like your classmate is going to be a police officer, and you said you wouldn't think bad about him, why would you automatically have a assumed opinion or some kind of perception about the officers here in our own county because of something that's happening worldwide? And so it was just interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, if it should be, when they have open house beginning of the school year, is it something where, administration or even select teachers should maybe put on like an assembly for the parents and the child to teach, so that both parties hear, what they should and should not do on the internet, and teach them a little bit about digital literacy, because we're actually getting into the era of the parents are also in that when technology kind of kicked off big time, you know what I mean? Like, so they're kind of naive towards it too, and they're trying to teach their children. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
Because
it doesn't help when parents are starting fights or posting things that are mildly inappropriate on their Facebook.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying,
You
like,
have no
we're
idea.
getting into that era of now the parents and the children both, that the internet is what they know. That's what they grew up with. Where like my generation, I didn't, and maybe it's a good thing we didn't have social media and stuff in high school. But now the parents of these kids did grow up with social media. So we're starting to see the parents are kind of acting like kids, or vice versa, through the internet. But I think that maybe something at the beginning of the school year, like an open house, would be beneficial. Now, would they attend? I don't know, but at least it's offered. So,
Yeah.
okay. So does anybody else have anything they want to add? Or can I stop recording?
So for do we need to go through and answer the questions, or should we just type? So for some of the common themes, we all had some of the same common themes.
Yeah, well, I'll stop the recording now. You think?
Yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been kind of filling it out as we go. So